Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank all the witnesses for your testimony, and now I understand something about what's good about Mr. Westmoreland since he worked on a dairy farm. So one of your testimony had remarks in there about I'd synthesize it down to this: the best place in the world to raise a family is right there on the land. And I just came from the Ag Committee, by the way, and why I was late. But your testimony does impact me, as I can reference that in our corn region. And I want to assure you, Mr. Kohler, if your peanut producers decide they want to raise corn down there, and I know they've got to make up their mind pretty quick, that I'm not looking at this in any parochial way. You got to get all you can out of the land. And one of the things we've tried to do is more dollars per acre. That solves really our agriculture problems throughout time. But I'm curious about this from. Now, before I ask my question, I want to comment also. Mr. Ambrosio's comment, I think, was the most significant in that you can't inspect safety into a system. You have to have a culture. And reiterated by Mr. Kohler, if I remember correctly, and agreed, I think, by the rest of you. And I think that's a very significant point. I think that food inspection needs to be the inspection of the culture, and if the culture doesn't reflect the kind of food safety that's necessary, then that should bring more scrutiny in the food safety until such time as the culture is created or the place is shut down. That to me, and I reflect back on having gone to a pharmaceutical manufacturing company and visited that, and they had great vats of white powder and people walking around in white frock coats, and they had a laboratory to evaluate quality control, and I asked, where's my FDA inspector? And well, there's none here. And when was the last time he was here? Well, I think he was here late last year, maybe 6 or 7 months ago. You mean you don't have anybody on site like a USDA meat inspector watching all of the pharmaceuticals? The answer is no. Their quality control is in the quality of the pharmaceuticals that they produce in bulk that are packaged up in little capsules and sold to people, and in the liability that trails that clear back to them. They create that culture because there are incentives in place for a good, solid, clean food culture, and I think that's what we have to do. But I wanted to pose this question in this way: Are we? How many people have died in America because of lack of food safety in the last 10 years, the last 50 years, any increment anybody would like to take a stab at? Myself, I have a hard time coming up with the numbers that I think would impact in comparison to many of the other hazards we face in life. Does anybody want to take a stab at that? I understand. Then I'll take you back to ALAR, which seemed to be the precursor for the modern reaction to the lack of food safety, and it destroyed the apple market. And of course, it didn't affect my region again either. But it set the parameter that a scare of food safety chases the market away. It took a lot of apple producers out of business. We have the BSE issue, which was mentioned, and that hurt the beef industry dramatically. And now here we are with the impact on the peanut industry. And just sitting there having to make a decision, if you don't get some answers, Mr. Kohler, can you tell us what you might do?
Well, I represent farmers because that's my job, but I can tell you what farmers are telling me. They're struggling now to know what to do because our primary rotation is peanut and cotton with some corn. And we can't grow corn like your guys can there in the Midwest. We have to work pretty hard at it, and it's pretty costly for us to do it. We have to irrigate. And the choices just aren't there. With 42-cent cotton, there's no cash flow there. With peanuts now below our cost of production, nothing there to cash flow. And I'm not sure I know what farmers are going to do, because sometimes they make a decision based on emotion rather than on what their pocketbook is. But the National Center for Peanut Competitiveness has run every representative farm they have in this country, and they found that farmers would lose more money if they'd go fishing all year and not farm.
And I'm looking at the projected gross receipts that you need to make your land cash flow, and I come up with $621 an acre for dry land, $834 an acre for irrigated land, and what has happened to your land values, your asset values that uphold your continuing operation?
Farming-wise, land values have kind of held where they are because of one thing, but it's changed a whole lot in the last few years. Our land values aren't continuing to escalate because we don't have the migration from Florida coming back up to buy 100 acres and a horse. It used to be 40 acres and a mule, but it's 100 acres and a horse right now. And because of the situation in the economy. So certainly land values aren't going back up. And the question is, at what point do they start falling then in value?
Well, I thank all the witnesses, and we'll keep sending you corn because we don't know how to make grits. So.